supervision.
That is.
Okay. Before I proceed on with my argument, Your Honor, I would ask for, in my understanding, is 3 members of the victim's family would like to address to a court at this time.
Okay, and if I didn't indicate so earlier, we are on a live stream at this time.
Thank you very much, Your Honor.
Can you help her out with the microphone, Mr. Huebner?
Yeah.
Please state and spell your name for the record.
My name is Aisha, I-E-S-H-A. I'm the victim's mother,
Okay, we need the whole name, please.
Aisha Bunch.
Spell it, please.
I-E-S-H-A-B-U-N-C-H.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I just want to let everyone know that my life has changed extremely for the worse. I have to live without someone I was living for. This is the hardest thing I ever had to do. At 29 years old, I had to bury my child due to something that could have been controlled. This is how my life have to be forever now. No amount of pictures, memories, or nothing is enough. I can't hear her voice, nothing, but his family can. I have to go every day with a 2-year-old, which is my other daughter, asking, where's her sister? Constantly saying her name, getting excited when she see pictures as if she's gonna see her again. I have to be the one to explain that to her as she get older because she don't fully understand right now. I just wanna ask, like at the time that they was speeding, like, did they really think nothing was gonna happen? Like, did they really think they was gonna make it to their destination without absolutely no one getting hurt in the process? Everyone keeps saying he only 21, he's this, he's that, all of that type of stuff, but my daughter was only 7. And she had to leave this earth because of carelessness. She didn't even have an opportunity to do or to be what she wanted to be in life. She was given no chance to do none of the things that she always talked about doing when she got older. No amount of apologies or anything will bring her back, but I'm asking for the court to see and deal with this case as any other death case. I feel as much time that's able to be given should be given and served. Not trying to sound selfish, but at this point, I want to know how other people would feel and what they would do in this type of situation if they were put in my shoes. I don't feel no one will handle this and want what I want unless they have to go through it. No one will ever know how I feel until it hits their home. And for all of those listening to false information, I just want to say, you can't believe everything you hear. I'm 30 years old, not 5. I'm pretty sure I'm not that stupid to have my daughter in the front seat of any car. My child was in her booster seat, in the back seat, in a seat belt, regardless of what everybody is listening to. I turned at the green light that I had the right to turn on, but when someone is going over 100 miles per hour, they're coming faster than anyone can see. So, like, that's kind of ignorant to sit there and say that I turned out in front of him, it's my fault that my car got hit. So it's like, I'm to blame for what? For people who saying your daughter will still be here if you haven't turned out in front of him, like, that's a different kind of special to me. Like, my daughter would still be here if they wasn't driving at that rate of speed. Then comments going around saying, well, you would have been dead too if he was going that fast. She was on the side that actually got hit. Yes, I had injuries, but the impact of the hit, she had more injuries because she was on that side and it was more severe. He hit the car like so hard. Some of her beads was out of her head. Like, how is that possible? Some of the stuff out the trunk was on the ground. So I'm confused. Like, and then I seen that with my own eyes. Like, nobody was there to have no type of opinion or anything to say I'm lying about anything. It didn't even look like the car had a door on it no more, the side that was hit. All the windows was busted out, like everything. I don't feel nobody is sincerely apologetic or anything. So no, I don't feel sorry for no amount of time that's given. The least anybody could have did was checked on the situation, but yet they switched into another car and just drove off, leaving me standing there screaming for help and leaving her in the middle of the street. I wonder why they drove off. Like, I always wanted to ask that. Like, was it nervousness? Was it like what? Like, why not check on anything? It's like y'all just got y'all people and just drove off. Just forget what's going on down there. So that's like real kind of selfish. No one knows anything except the people that was at the scene. And I feel like I've been receiving nothing but disrespect since then. Like, to the person, his mom who wrote me, disrespecting me, calling me a junkie, talking about I pop pills. I highly doubt we know the same people. I don't pop no type of pills. I'm not a drunk. I don't smoke. I don't do cigarettes. I don't do nothing. So for you to get in there in my inbox disrespecting me, you could have said sorry for your loss and then said what you said. But it was just straight, bland out disrespect, like nothing but disrespect. And I'm going through what I'm going through. Like, I don't understand that. I want to say that Milwaukee is real small. So, like, I doubt that we know the same people, whoever's telling her false information. So I would appreciate if don't contact me about anything anymore, because that's 100% false, and I don't appreciate it. And I'm going through still grieving at the moment. And you want to sit there and disrespect me over something that your child did and something that could have been prevented. No, I ain't got nothing else to say.
Mr. Hubner, do you have any pictures of this child?
On my phone, yeah.
I'd like to see one. I'd like to know who I'm talking about here.
Do I go up there?
All right, it's not need to stand up. We'll just look at the phone. All right, thank you.
I believe we have two more members of the family who would like to speak.
It's fine. All right, please get up to the microphone and state and spell your name.
Marcella Bush, capital Marcella. Last name is Bush.
Good afternoon. What would you like to say?
First of all, I would just like to, talk about my grandbaby here. The last time that we actually seen each other was the day of the homicide, that night before it happened. She picked me up from work and, you know, we had a conversation like we always do, hugs, kisses, you know, Nana, how was work? London, how was school and everything? And that it was from one of my nieces actually asking me if I've heard anything about the incident that happened on 76 in Capitol. And like I explained to her, I told her no. So we talked for a minute, we hung up, the phone rang again. It was my baby sister. She was telling me that the incident on 76 in Capitol had involved my children. So basically, when she got to the scene, she wasn't by herself. And when she got up there and she called me and she told me what happened, I was not able to get to that scene as fast as I wanted to. But I got a ride to the hospital where they were going. And my grandbaby was laying there in that street, and my daughter was sitting there in that car. And when she told me that the accident involved them, I didn't know what to do. I mean, I wanted to just go and just leave out so bad, and I know I didn't have a way up there. And by the time I got there, you know, everything would have been over with, because when she was there, she said that they were about to wrap it up. I don't even know how long she had been there. But the thing is, you actually ran into a car coming over 100 miles per hour, driving down the street, and you didn't even stop to think, as a driver, let me check and see if they are all right. I need to try to stay on the scene to see if they are going to be okay. No one thought about that at all. What he did is jumped out of one car and jumped into another, and they ran down 76 past my grandbaby and left her laying there. Didn't even try to see, you know, if she was breathing or anything. Let them know what happened. So when they directed me to Freighter Hospital, where my daughter was, I walked in that room. She was laying there in that bed, and all I can do is just, you know, tears coming down my eyes, because I didn't know if she was gonna make it or not. I walked over there and I touched her. I touched her from head to toe, and when she opened her eyes, the only thing that I could say was, thank you, Jesus, because it could have been 2 lives instead of 1. And we would have been looking down on 2 caskets instead of one. And I don't think I would have been able to take that because that was my first grandchild and that was my first daughter. So they kept her there and I stayed there with her. But the only thing, how we found out that my grandbaby passed on that scene is when it came on the 9 o'clock news that night in the hospital. And I mean, it made it to the news before it can make it to the family. And I just couldn't understand that. And then when they broke it to her, I don't know how she felt about it because she was back there laying in that hospital bed and she was hurt. So basically, you know, I just couldn't understand, you know, how could you just take a life and not even, you know, have any type of condolences and sympathy for it. This family here, I don't know how fast they got the information on what happened, but it's been a whole year since my grandbaby has been passed. And out of this whole year, they never took the time out to reach out to us with a condolence, with a card, with a flower, with any type of information.
Is there
Not
something,
even,
I'm sorry, is there something wrong in the front row here? I'm sorry, go ahead.
I mean, not even Mr. Washington. Because if my grandbaby had a case on file here, then it wouldn't have been hard to find out any type of information with an apology being okay. But I mean, they did not try to do that because they did not care. And I mean, if you put yourself in my shoes as a grandmother, then you would know exactly how it feels to lose a grandchild. Because unless you're in someone else's shoes when they're going through something, then nobody's gonna know how it feels. Okay, I don't know if this family has ever lost anybody, but still, it does not hurt to reach out and apologize. And if anybody should have been apologizing and sending a condolence, it should have been Mr. Washington because he took my grandbaby's life away and I would never be able to see her again. We would never be able to have a relationship like we had ever again. And I mean, I just don't understand, you know, technically you were driving that fast, not knowing what was going to happen while you were coming down that road. You could have took your own life also just as well as you took someone else's life. And it did not necessarily have to be my kids, to be honest with you. It could have been anybody's family members. Anybody could have been hurt that night. It's just the fact that you left a scene. If you had stayed on the scene just to check on my children, that would have been okay right there. If you had just followed them to the hospital to make sure they were going to be okay, I mean, just let the family know that you were concerned because his family was not concerned at all. They were only concerned about him, what he was going through, what was going to happen to him. But we have a 7-year-old that life was taken from her last year. And nobody felt like it was wrong at all. I mean, true enough, he did not know who was going to be coming out, who was going to be driving, who was going to be on that street. It's just the fact that you were already in violation when you were driving over 100 miles per hour and not knowing what's going to happen to you, let alone happen to somebody else. And I'm here today because I would just want justice for my grandbaby. I do, because she didn't deserve to go this way. I mean, her name, she had a name for a reason, London Quesada, but that name meant a whole lot because she carried a whole lot of titles with that name. She was a little cousin. She was a big sister. She was a niece and a great niece. And she was a big sister. She had brothers, and she still had a little sister that has to live with this for the rest of her life, not knowing that she does not have her big sister with her. And most of all, she was a loving daughter. She loved to play. She loved to dance. She loved to be with her family. She had certain characters that she loved to do. She had certain things that she loved to do. And most of all, she loved to go to church with me. It was like she was just my left hand buddy sitting right there on the side of me every Sunday. And that's one thing that she never did forget to do, was call me to see how I was doing every day. Now, how was your day? How was work? I want to go to church with you. Make sure you pick me up. If I don't pick her up, she get dropped off. She loved to spend time with her family. She loved to dance. She just had a lot of things that was going on in her life that she cannot continue right now because she's not here. And if this hadn't happened, you speeding and driving reckless, my grandbaby would be here right now. And would none of us be here at all? And I just really, I just want justice for my grandbaby. That's why I'm here. Because, it's been so long. And I've been grieving with this ever since it happened, and I'm still grieving. Now, I mean, this family here is never going to probably, like what's going on and like what's happening. But my thing is, right now, it's too late for the apologies. It's too late for the condolences. It's too late for anything because, I mean, they have plenty enough time to do that. But nobody reached out. And that's the only thing, that's the only problem right there. You took a life, you committed a crime, and you showed no interest about what happened. So, I mean, I just don't know what else actually to say, but, I love my grandbaby and I missed her. And I'm here today because, I want justice. I mean, I'm a Christian, true enough. I have to forgive. I do. But there's not a saying that I have to like what happened because his family still has him. We don't have her no more. So, I mean, they really should be, blessed that nothing really happened to him. But he took a life of a 7-year-old baby that is not even here anymore. So, I mean, I just, I just really, just want justice for her. I'm not here to talk nobody down. I'm not here to say anything bad. I'm here to represent my grandbaby and my daughter and the family. And that's all I have to say.
All right, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, ma'am. I have one more member of the family that would like to speak.
Fine. All right, please state and spell your name.
Lacutha Brown, LACUTHA-BROWN.
What would you like to say?
Okay, I just want to say, first of all, it's taken a lot for us to come over here. Not just our family, but their family too. I know it take a lot. Second thing I want to say is we not a hard down family where we couldn't have been reached out to or that we wouldn't have understood, because for one, we not perfect. For two, everybody make mistakes. For three, I know that guy and the other guy, they're young, and that's what's going on out here in these streets. It starts somewhere. It starts in your environment. Sometimes it starts in your home. It depends, but it's a mistake, and we do understand. My thing is, we're a humble family. We're an acknowledging family. We're a family that represent. We genuine, and we took a lot of losses. Since this happened, my mother passed away. I had to stop her from looking on Facebook, seeing all the dangerous stuff that they thought was dangerous and threats that we supposed to get beat up and this and that, you know, and all these mistakes came from not understanding that things can happen if you don't listen. And a lot of people I know, when you coming up, you really just don't listen. So somewhere down the line, someone didn't listen. So we understand the mistakes. But my thing is, when I found out about his leadership, that's what got me, is the leadership. Because first of all, we know he was young, but where is he getting this from where he couldn't be remorseful? Okay? So once we found out the leadership and everything wasn't remorseful, I can understand why he was out there going 90 miles per hour, 100 miles per hour, because he ain't had no leadership. Because at the end of the day, who wants to not be remorseful about a 7-year-old that your son did? We would have said to our son, what the hell was you doing out there driving that fast? And what, you done hit somebody, you done, what? You know, so mistakes happen. We do understand that. Since then, we lost our mother. She died of some broken heart syndrome disease from grieving or whatever, Tumasuka-buka, whatever. Broken heart. Once we looked it up, it's a broken heart disease. That's when my mother passed away, July 1st. Not only did she pass from that, she had to sit up and be humble. You get what I'm saying? And not say nothing back, because we the victims, tell you the truth. We ain't did nothing wrong to nobody family, but at the end of the day, we understood that it was a mistake that was made. What we don't want to do, because it seemed like this court has already made their decision on sentencing and all this. I didn't come here to say, yeah, he need to get the highest time that he need to get. I didn't come here for that. Because guess what? We ain't never gonna bring my niece back, whether it's he get 1,000 years or whether he get out tonight. She ain't coming home. It's the aftermath for me. He gotta go to jail already. But see, it's some kids out there now that's on their side of the family. It's some kids out there now, and there's some kids out there on our side of the family that need to understand that 90 miles per hour is against the law, and your ass can go to jail. Excuse my language. It's some kids sitting behind me now that need to be understanding what those kids did was a mistake, and they was wrong. It's some kids out there now that need to know that, not that what he did, well, we gonna rah-rah because he ain't do nothing wrong. No, it's a mistake that happened. It's a mistake. Simple and plain, a mistake. But it's some kids back there that need to understand that that's the wrong mistake to make. We didn't come here to say, you know, what we gonna do and what we ain't gonna do, because we ain't gonna do nothing. But we want the law to defend us. Because we, you know, like my sister said, we could, you know, we could do anything. We could have been anywhere. It could have been anybody, but it was us. And you know, to be truthfully honest, right now, I thank God it was us, because we can handle this. We can deal with stuff like this. Ain't no family never gonna be like ours. We can hold our head up, because if it was us, we would have called and apologized. We would have sent flowers. We would have sent business thank you cards to people businesses. So I'm glad it was us. Not saying that we want our niece to be gone, but we done suffer pain way worse than this. The devil got to find something next to do. What I want to know is, how do they sleep at night? Is it comfortable knowing that you got a kid that's 7? If you're not remorseful now, you got kids that's coming up. You got grandkids. You got a daughter. You got a cousin. You got an auntie. This thing could be anybody. It can always happen to anybody else. We not the wrong people here. You know, whether justice be served or not. What's gonna happen next? What y'all teaching? Who y'all teaching to do different? What difference y'all finna make behind this? That's what I want to know. Is it gonna be a difference come behind it?
Thank you. Did you review the pre-sentence investigation? Do you have any additions or corrections?
I do not.
And do you have any photos of the scene here that I can see?
If you would like, I can put them on my computer and pull them up on the screen. That would be, I have them all on CD, Your Honor.
That's fine. I'd just like to get an idea of
Yes, Your Honor.
what things look like.
If the court will bear with me. And I'm sorry, Your Honor, some courts are different than I used to a court in which there is the preference not to show that, so I will definitely have that prepared right now.
Well, I'm not looking to see a number of gory pictures here. I'm just looking to see what the vehicles look like. I don't need more than one or two photos.
Yes. Unfortunately, the computer system is not working the best for me right now.
So I don't want to see any photos of the deceased at the scene.
Will not. I will make sure that there are just a few. And I should have evidence control. Just let me get the picture up first before I flip over. I think that's the best way to do it.
You want me to take evidence control off?
Right now, I'm not locked in, so it's going to be okay. That's why it's blank.
Okay.
Scene photos. And counsel, you want to take a look at it before I put it on the screen? So you want to come on over here?
That's okay. That's all right. I'll wait for the state to give me the photos. Thank you.
Okay, so we got that one. Try to find a good one here. Pull out. Your Honor, I'm going to be now connecting. I should have evidence control at this point. And a moment. And then,
And again, is this the victim that the deceased was in, or?
yes,
Okay.
now, as we're looking, we can see what we have on that vehicle. And I'm not going to be showing any of the other photos, but as the court can see, there was significant damage on the vehicle.
The first two are sufficient.
Okay. Now, Judge, as the court is aware, in terms of the sentence, the court needs to take into account a number of different factors. The court needs to take into account the character of the defendant, the nature of the crime, the need to protect the public, the need to send a message to the defendant and to the public that this conduct will not be tolerated, the need to rehabilitate, and the need to punish. I have reviewed the PSI, Your Honor, and I do know because portions of that PSI, as to what people said, the victim's family are aware of. And the court can obviously, I know the court has read the PSI, and certain statements made by the defendant's family, A, are not supported by any evidence, and B, appear to be, I think, the victim's family taking this as slanders towards them. I think the court has seen some of that, and quite frankly, what the defendant's mom says, I don't care. It's irrelevant. It's not true. I don't think the court should consider it one way or the other. And I think it speaks to her character, but we're not here about her character. We're here about the defendant's character. Where I do have an issue, and I do think it is important, is the statements the defendant made in the PSI, but I'll come back to those in a minute. In this case, Your Honor, we know that the defendant was driving his vehicle and his friend, defendant Hightower, who the court will hopefully, if we have time, sentence later today, are driving in their respective vehicles. I think it is important to note that these statements by both Mr. Hightower and this defendant are that they were not racing.
I'm sorry, that they were what?
Not racing. They keep saying they weren't racing each other. I would just simply note that the witness who's in the criminal complaint, DF, Mr. Flagg, he's behind them. And in his opinion, these two vehicles are racing each other. That is reflected in the criminal complaint. And I just went and looked at his police report again to make certain that I had it exactly correct. He believes that they are racing each other. It is the Pontiac, the striking vehicle, and then the red Chrysler PT Cruiser type vehicle, which is Mr. Hightower's. That they reach the intersection of 76 and Calumet. That he observes the defendant's vehicle strike a Toyota, which is the victim's vehicle, which was turning from 76 onto Calumet. And then he actually saw the little girl get ejected from the car. He then sees, and as we know and everybody agrees, Mr. Hightower then pulls up in his PT Cruiser and takes the defendant as well as the defendant's passenger away from the vehicle. Now, I want to just simply state to begin with, I know the defendant says that he was just driving, kind of fast. Mr. Hightower, in fact, stated that he believed that the defendant was going over 100 miles an hour and he couldn't catch up. Another witness, Mr. Jones, or Mr. and Mrs. Jones, didn't actually see the incident, but hears it, is in his home, is in the home, and refers to it as hearing roaring going down the street. And then a crash, roaring. That's how fast the cars were going, that this witness described it as roaring. A bus operator with the initials of CJ, who's operating a Milwaukee County Transit bus prior to the crash, doesn't even see the crash. But prior to the crash, sees Mr. Hightower and the defendant's car driving so fast, it shook the bus. Shook a bus. Another witness described them as going very fast. When the black box of the defendant's vehicle was downloaded, and I know the court has some familiarity, but this is the airbag module. And what the airbag module lets us know is it basically grabs a snapshot of what the vehicle's doing approximately 5 seconds prior to the impact event or the crash. At 5 seconds prior to the impact, that black box showed that the defendant's vehicle was going 107 miles an hour on a city street. 107 miles an hour. And I want to be very clear so we understand this. The defendant is going 107 miles an hour in a speed limit of 40. So he's going over double the speed limit. At 4 seconds, and also the acceleration at that point is at 82% and the brake is not activated. At 4 seconds, 107 miles an hour with the acceleration at 66. So he's pulling off the gas a little bit. At 3 seconds, 107 miles an hour. Acceleration's now at 47. Brake is still not on. At 2 seconds prior to the impact, the brake is now on, acceleration's off. He's moved his foot from the accelerator over to the brake. and the brake is on, and he's now at 103. This is the beginning of the braking. And he's going to slam on those brakes. What we know is that 1 second out, the speed is now at 40 miles an hour with the brake on. The detectives, the crash reconstruction experts look at this and state that as a result of that acceleration, this is consistent with what is referred to as tire lockup. It's basically the tires just lock up. And while acceleration comes down, they oftentimes will see the black box has the speed go down, but the car's just locked up. And while it decelerates, it doesn't decelerate quite that fast. So the experts, are unable to say exactly how fast that car was going prior or at the moment of impact. They do indicate that scenes show significant locked wheel tire marks on the roadway just prior to the impact. At the second before, or 1 second prior to the impact, the steering wheel angle is actually at negative 176 degrees. So he's trying to turn. There's nothing he could do. There's nothing he could do. There's nothing that the victim's family could do, because when you're going 107 miles an hour, you can't stop. You just can't. And the idea that anyone attempts to state, and this is a conversation that I've had, that because she was turning, she was legally allowed to turn. And under the rules of the road, when you are speeding, you lose the right of way. Had he been going 40 miles an hour, she makes it by a mile through that intersection. She's alive if he's driving the right speed limit. This child's dead because he's going 107 miles an hour. And no one could stop what happened because of what he did. Now, I think there is another factor that the court needs to take into consideration. When the defendant hops into that car, he is doing so having never held a valid driver's license. This isn't just someone, even though he was charged with operating after suspension and his licensability was suspended, his current license status was suspended. He's never held a valid driver's license. He never went and got a license. He shouldn't be on the road. This isn't somebody who passed the driver's test and then, didn't pay some tickets and they're suspended. He never had a license. He got a ticket for operating without a valid driver's license on January 3rd of 2020. He received an operating after suspension conviction on August 4th of 2020. And this incident occurs on October 28th of 2020. So we are within 3 months of the last time he basically was told, don't drive. And not only is he in a car, he's going 100 miles an hour on a city street. Once the impact occurs, Mr. Hightower pulls up in his vehicle. What I do not find under any circumstances to be at all believable is when the defendant states in his PSI what happens about why he leaves. He states, well, his car was totaled and his friend's phone was password protected and his friend was knocked out. That's true. We know that to be true. Witnesses, Mr. Hightower tells us the witness who in fact himself was later found and interviewed, he admits that he was knocked out. But the defendant never goes over to the other car. The defendant never checks on anybody. There's people around. He never asks anybody to call 911. Instead, when Mr. Hightower pulls up, according to Mr. Hightower, he tells him to take off. Mr. Hightower's statement is he says, no, we got to get your friend. And the two of them then pull the friend over and put him in the car. Now, the defendant says, and this is a quote on page 3 of the PSI, an acquaintance pulled up beside him and offered him a ride. That is an attempt, and it's not credible. It's not just an acquaintance pulled up beside. This is a person whose vehicle other people state he was racing. This is a person whose vehicle was beside him and in conjunction with the defendants was traveling so fast it shook a Milwaukee County Transit bus. And he tells the PSI writer, an acquaintance just pulled up and offered him a ride. He then says that the reason he left was because he was going to drive his friend to the hospital. I don't know if that was exactly what he was thinking or not, but they never went to the hospital. They never took him. They went to a friend's house. He didn't go. They never went. And the defendant never came back to that scene. And I also understand the defendant saying, well, oh, he left his driver's license, or I'm sorry, he left his ID card because he never had a driver's license. He left his ID card there so people would know it was him. He could have stayed, even if he was trying to get his friend to the hospital. He could have put him in the car with Mr. Hightower and said, I have to stay to make certain that the person whose car I just obliterated is okay. But he didn't. We need to take a look at the character of the defendant, and there is a lot for us to consider. There are mitigating factors, and they must be considered, and the court should take them into consideration, as have I. He's never had a criminal record. When I run both juvenile and adult, I find nothing. The PSI found the same. This is no criminal record. Nothing. That's a mitigating factor. He accepted responsibility. He pled guilty. He has accepted responsibility for what he did. That is a mitigating factor. But at the same time, we must understand that when the defendant is accepting responsibility, we also need to consider what he says and how he does so. When you read his PSI, I was left with the impression that the defendant was trying to say, oh, it was just an accident. I believe he even says, I'm just there at the wrong place at the wrong time. No, he was in a car that he never should have been driving 100 miles an hour. And the PSI writer's impressions are the same. He maintains that he was not at fault for the accident, and this is from page 19. But the fact remains that had he been following the law, he would not have been driving on that evening, and the situation never would have occurred. The defendant does not in any capacity assume responsibility for his behavior, albeit he does feign remorse for the child having lost her life. The defendant minimized his participation in this offense and further rationalized his leaving to the scene to provide care for his injured friend that never actually saw any medical professionals on that night to deal with what may have been a medical condition. When the defendant pled guilty, I know the court wasn't there for that. But the defendant sat at the table smiling and laughing after everything happened. And as I sat there with the victim's mother, smiling and laughing and joking and hooting and hollering at his family that was in the gallery. That was what happened. The court wasn't there for that. I've decided to bring that to the court's attention because I think it lets us know what happened.
And Your Honor, I'm just going to object to that because I disagree with any hooting and hollering. And I did not observe any hooting and hollering at the table when I was here. Obviously, hooting and hollering and laughing and giggling and things like that would be things that I would try to control. And so I would assert that I disagree with the state's characterization of things that happened outside of the presence of the jury. And if the state had wanted to put that on the record at the time, we could have addressed that.
Was there a jury?
There was no jury. I don't know what he's talking about, a jury.
I said, put that on the record. We could have addressed that.
You said outside the presence of the jury.
I didn't. I don't believe that that's what I said.
Yeah, you did.
Well, I don't know, understand. I don't know where that would have come out of my mouth, Your Honor, but I misspoke then. It appeared, I was sitting next to Mr. Washington. I don't recall any of that happening in court, in front of the court, and I disagree with it.
All right, fine.
Your Honor, he is a young man. He has no criminal record. But the family is right that this is unfortunately something that's happening way too much in Milwaukee. Young men, also young women, but young people, just driving recklessly, driving at insane speeds. That's what's occurred in this case. I do not believe that this is an accident. I do not believe that this is anything other than a vehicular crash caused by an individual who got behind the wheel of a car that he never should have been driving and drove it at a speed that is ridiculous. Quite frankly, we are lucky, as the victim's family stated, that we have only had to deal with one death here. And the fact that the defendant continues to make it seem like somehow it wasn't his fault, I think takes away, in some regard, from that acceptance of responsibility by pleading guilty. The PSI writer came to the same conclusion. I do believe that prison is appropriate, Your Honor. It is appropriate because of the dangerous conduct that the defendant took. It is appropriate because the defendant was flying down the street at over 100 miles an hour. It is appropriate because the defendant did not care whether or not he had a driver's license and didn't care, quite frankly, he didn't even seem to care about the life of the person next to him. At this point, when you're driving that fast, it almost gets to the point of not if, but when you're going to hurt someone. And that is why the state's recommendation is appropriate. For that reason, Your Honor, I am asking this court to sentence the defendant to 12 to 15 years of initial confinement. I'm leaving that extended supervision up to the court. Thank you.
What was the approximate time of the accident?
If you will just give 1 minute, I can tell you exactly when the police responded. The first officer on the scene was dispatched at 7:53 p.m.
Thank
In
you.
case you want to see that, counsel.
Mr. Singleton, any additions or corrections to the pre-sentence report?
Well, Your Honor, we disagree with the characterizations of my client as feigning remorse. We disagree with what even the state has characterized as quotations from Mr. Washington, which are not expressed in quotation marks or as direct quotations from Mr. Washington. They are expressed as the PSI writer's characterizations of what Mr. Washington had said, but no, nothing direct beyond those characterizations of Mr. Washington's, the legitimacy of his remorse or the characterization of his remarks.
Well, the quote on page, the statement on page 3 in the last paragraph appears to be a direct quote.
Well, there is a, Mr. Washington stated his car was, quote, totaled. There's quotation marks on that. That then says an acquaintance pulled up beside him and offered him a ride. An acquaintance pulled up beside him and offered him a ride. Those are statements about what Mr. Washington allegedly said. That's not a direct quote. It would be an I pulled next to me, and it would be in the first person if it were a quotation.
I was referencing the last paragraph, counsel.
Nothing but an accident.
Right. Well, that is reflected as a quotation, but the state earlier quoted him as saying that it was a direct quote, the reference to the acquaintance part, and that is not a direct quote. It's not as stated as a direct quote, and that's my point, Your Honor.
All right, fine. Go ahead.
Your Honor, first I would note that there are 3 individuals from the defense who would like to speak, but they're members of the defense family, and at this point, there has been so much accusations about things that have apparently transpired or allegedly transpired between the parties. I don't feel comfortable. I don't know that calling his mother or his sisters at this point is going to be helpful, and I think it's going to be a distraction.
You better make sure he's in agreement with that, because we got plenty of security. I'm not worried about it. And he needs to have people speak for him if that's what they want.
Your Honor, then in that regard, his mother would like to speak.
That's fine. Step forward. All right, please sit in the same chair that the other people who spoke were, and state and spell your name right into the microphone.
My name is Lakeisha Wells, LeKeyshaWells.
All right, thank you. What would you like to say?
I want to first start off regarding them saying that we didn't apologize at this time and any other time because we have a defense lawyer. We were told to not contact him, the other family, so it wouldn't get bigger than what it was. So out of respect, we kept that no contact order. As far as how he was raised, he scored the highest ACTs in the state of Wisconsin. He's a very intelligent young man. Stating that he was driving 100 miles an hour was stated by another defendant. I know for a fact, because the wheel bearing on the car was messed up, it couldn't go past 60. Now, if they were saying he was doing 60, yes. But at the same time, I feel like everybody should take accountability for their actions. So my son did take accountability. Yes, he was part of the accident, but he's not the only one. He was driving down that street, but sometimes we need to pay attention because I was always taught, you don't just drive for yourself, you drive for others. When the other car decided maybe they could beat traffic and turned out in front of traffic instead of waiting, yes, there was an accident. Did my son get picked up? Yes, he did, because yes, another defendant were taking him to the hospital. But he did decide to take them somewhere else so he could change his clothes so he wouldn't be part of the accident. Does my son need to go to prison for 12 to 15 years? No, he does not. Not at all. Is he remorseful? Well, he can speak and tell how he feels, but he was raised in a two-parent household. He graduated high school at the top of his class. He has never been in trouble. He is one of the best uncles to his nieces and nephews ever. Am I okay with how everything turns out? No. But only God can pass judgment, not nobody else in this courtroom.
Anything else?
No.
All right, thank you.
Your Honor, I have two, his sisters would also like to speak. He has two sisters who would like to speak to the
All
court.
right.
Hello,
Good afternoon. Please state and spell your name.
Latasia, Latahh, Washington, Washington.
What would you like to say?
I just want to start by saying, I remember this day like yesterday. Like, when it all went down, I was sitting in the building next from the building he always be at. And they're like, somebody running in the building, somebody running in the building. So I'm like, I got worried because I'm like, what's going on? And they got to telling me like, it's your brother. And my brother had just got my son to drop my son off by my sister's house. So I go over there and I go upstairs. His friend, of course, he's sitting in the hallway. I'm like, what's going on? My brother come out, he like, I just crashed my car. He got a gash on his head. So I'm like, okay, well, what went on? Where's your car? He like, I had to leave it. He like, the other guy, we grew up with him. He like, he was passed out. They were supposed to go to the hospital, but like she said, the other dude, he wanted to come back. They stayed in this apartment. They stayed on the same floor. They stayed in this apartment. My brother's friend stayed in the apartment right here. So he had to go to the house or whatever. So by that time, his friend he was awakened. He didn't want to go to the hospital. So I'm like, well, did anybody die? Like, is anybody hurt? They didn't know. So I called my sister. My sister like, tell him go back to the scene. Tell him go back to the scene. So he gets all nervous. I left to go put some gas in my car. And somebody stopped me. They're like, it was a little girl that died. And immediately I start crying because I'm like, dang, that's my brother. Like, my brother, he in trouble, he in trouble. So I go looking for my brother. I'm like, it's a little girl that died. He comes up to me. He hugs me tight. He gets to crying. He like, I know. Can't nobody say my brother ain't remorseful, because he is. He don't want to take his life behind it just because we ain't sit here and talk to nobody or nothing. This is still an open case. Can't nobody say he's not remorseful. It ain't been times where he cried. At the end of the day, he got to sit in that jail cell and think about the blood of this little girl on his hands. We don't feel like, oh, he not wrong. He know he wrong. It's not for us to tell him he wrong. It's not for the world to tell him he wrong. He know what he did. And that's why he's right here today. He's not arguing with it. He's not doing none of that. Like, this whole thing, it could have been avoided, but it happened. What one of our family members took from their family members, we cannot give back. We can never give back. But that does not make him a bad person because he panicked and he left the scene. He was hurt. This is a little girl we're talking about. This is not somebody grown where he just, walked off and like, just forget it. No, this is still a little girl. I have 3 kids of my own that he helped me raise. So he know what it's like. And if my son would have been in that car, my son probably would have been hurt too. We know this. So I don't feel like anybody could sit here and judge him and say, oh, well, he's not remorseful, or the family isn't remorseful, or their child is gone. We know that. We know this already. But it doesn't make it any better by saying he's still alive. We can't give a life for a life. It's unfortunate, yes it is, and I'm sorry that it happened. And I'm sorry they gotta go through this. But we're also grieving too. He's only 21 years old. He gotta go off, and we ain't never been apart from each other. My mama told us to stick with each other. I ain't trying to act like I'm all for my brother. He done did something wrong. He the best person. No, but my mama taught us to stick together. And whatever y'all choose to do with him, that's what I'm gonna do. But I don't feel like he deserves that much time. He doesn't. He ain't never been in trouble. He worked, since he was able to work, he's worked a job. He had just got that car, and he was so happy. He was so proud of himself because we came from so much, like so much. That's my brother. That's my baby brother. So all I can say is he's sorry.
One more, Sister, Your Honor.
Okay. Please.
Hi, my name is LaDestiny Sanders, LaDestaniSanders. And I just want to start by saying he was more like a son to me, my best friend. Anytime I call, he come. He got A's and B's, helped me with my homework. He helped me succeed in a lot of places in life. He's not a man. He is very much sorry. Despite what everyone else thinks, we cried in huddles together. We cried, we held each other. We did so much for each other. Once I got my house, he became my best friend. He never left my side, not once. All I keep saying is I wish he never went back to Brown Deer. This is the smartest man that I know. He could take a whole Rubik's Cube apart and put it back together. His brain is so smart, I don't feel like he deserves 12 to 15 years. He's a nice uncle. Every day my son asks me when his uncle coming home. I'm sorry to the family. I'm very much sorry. But what can we do to change that? He's sorry. He cried every day. And huddles, we cried together. Huddles, we never wanted to leave each other's side. I wish this never happened. I'm sorry to the family. But I feel like he don't deserve 12 to 15. But if that's what y'all want to give him, he just gotta take it as a man. And I just love you. And I love you so much. I love you, bro. Ain't nobody ever gonna take that from me. I love you, bro.
Whenever you're ready, counsel.
Thank you, Your Honor. There is no doubt, Your Honor, that this is a tragedy. That this is a tragedy that's brought on by my client's reckless conduct on that date. And I don't think, from the comments that I've heard, that they accurately reflect the way that Mr. Washington has approached this matter from my conversations with him, my understanding with him in the jail. It seems, when I read the PSI, that there's almost a desire to discount everything he says and to portray it in a light that he's not taking responsibility. To say that when he says this is an accident, what Mr. Washington means is he didn't mean to hurt anyone, and he didn't. He's not saying that he doesn't recognize that his behavior was reckless, that it was irresponsible, or that he's not responsible for what happened. You know, we can take a word and we can interpret it in a way that it sounds bad, but we have to also look at what Mr. Washington is trying to communicate when he's talking. And I can tell you that while Mr. Washington did leave the scene, something the state doesn't want to bring up is that Mr. Washington turned himself in within 24 hours. He contacted me, and I walked him down to the police station knowing that a little girl had died. He did leave his ID at the scene, and he turned himself in. And so this is not a situation where they had to go out into the community and look for him and knock down doors and find him. While yes, he was scared at the time, he immediately took responsibility even then. And I don't like the chauvinistic tone of the word manned up, but manned up because he walked right into the police station, made an appointment, and kept it, Your Honor, within 24 hours of this event. And so we can talk about what he did in the instance, but we also have to talk about what he did as an individual thereafter and what he did before, Your Honor. I've listened to his family, and I don't agree with everything that was said before, and I don't agree that Your Honor can't judge him, and I don't agree with the discussions about this being a 60-mile-an-hour accident. I'm not sure it was a 100-mile-an-hour accident either. I think some of those, I mean, if Your Honor is familiar with these types of vehicle memory chip things, there's some dispute, and there's always some asterisks by it, but he was certainly going too fast. What I see, Your Honor, in this case is what we see all too often with cases by individuals in Mr. Washington's age group. A split-second, spontaneous decision that alters the course of his life and the life of another family irreparably, Your Honor. Until this point, Mr. Washington had overcome a lot. He'd overcome a learning disability, an ADHD, to get good grades, a 3.2 GPA, to, I don't know if he had the highest ACT in the state, as his mom likes to remember, but certainly college level ACT college scores. He worked hard, worked a job, graduated early from high school. He kept himself out of trouble in an environment where, Your Honor knows, we see a lot of people get into a lot of trouble at a very young age. He worked hard enough to buy himself a car, and he didn't set out that day to go racing. He saw a friend who also had his car and made the decision to, in the moment, show off for not a long distance, probably not a decision that he thought about for very long, probably a decision that he made with almost no thought. And had he thought about it for 30 seconds or 60 seconds and considered the ramifications of his actions, he never would have done it. And Your Honor, as he sits here now, he never would do it again. Every time I talk to Mr. Washington in the last year, he is crying and expressing sorrow about what happened on that date and for the actions which he cannot take back. And we know that individuals of Mr. Washington's age are susceptible to these exact same terrible decisions in the heat of the moment, not even the heat of the moment, split decisions that they make without thinking about the consequences that irreparably hurt their lives. I think back, I wasn't sure whether I should tell this story. I'm still a cigarette smoker, Your Honor. And until the moment that I took my very first cigarette, I hated cigarettes. I did the courses and the classes, and I would watch my grandmother smoke and heave until the day that I went to a new school and was there with a person who I thought could make me popular. And she asked me if I smoked, and almost before the words came out of her mouth, I was telling her, yes, I smoked my first cigarette and I still smoke today. It didn't matter that I knew cigarettes were bad. It didn't matter what they would do to me. And I look back at that moment frequently when I buy a pack of smokes today. It's the way that people's minds tend to work at that age that they make stupid decisions knowing better, despite all of the information that they've been given up to that point, and often go on to regret those decisions, you know, either in the moment or shortly thereafter. Mr. Washington made a stupid decision in an otherwise good life to drive too fast and to drive recklessly and to show off his new car when he saw his friend that day. Whether we want to call it racing or showing off, he'll never do that again, Your Honor. No matter if you got out today or in 12 or 15 years, we talk about rehabilitation. He already knows what he did, Your Honor, was wrong. If you talk about setting an example, you know, you can set an example, but if you do so, you have to understand that there's only so much you can do, Your Honor, to overcome the spontaneous, stupid decisions that people in this age tend to make. I've read articles since I've had this case of police officers drag racing their cars. It seems like racing cars has been something that people have been doing since the moment they put something on four wheels. Let's talk about what's not present in this case, Your Honor. Some of the factors that we would expect to see. There's no other criminal activity here, Your Honor. This isn't a stolen car, Your Honor. He's not using drugs. He's not evading. He's not doing many of the things that we've come to expect in these types of cases where somebody gets into a car accident. He's not the prototypical defendant in these cases, Your Honor. Well, this is actually reckless driving that he's being punished ultimately for the result. And the result is that a young girl lost her life. I've looked at some of the other cases that have come before this court that involve sentences in the range that the state is talking about, and most of them involve direct violence, intentional direct violence, with knives and things like that. Mr. Washington didn't set out to hurt anyone that day, Your Honor. He set out to just drive across town and made a split-second stupid decision that is going to change his life forever, and that is harmed and decimated another family and cost a young girl her life. But this is not a maximum sentence, Your Honor. And I understand there's two charges here. I understand that when I say maximum, ultimately the biggest harm here is the harm that was caused to that young child who died. And the other occupant of the vehicle, her mother, was also injured as well. But I don't believe this is a 12 to 15-year sentence, Your Honor. What I believe is that Mr. Washington needs incarceration and an opportunity to learn better and do better, Your Honor. Not incarceration until he's in his 30s for one moment in his life, which he would take back in a heartbeat. I believe that this court should sentence him to a sentence in the range of 6 years initial confinement, and also allow him to go to boot camp, for instance, and take advantage of the same cognitive thinking that the court, that the PSI recommends. When we look at all of the scales in the PSI, his likelihood of rehabilitating, Your Honor, I don't believe he can go to boot camp, but I do believe that any services which he can do should be offered at this point. When we look at the scales, his unlikely to have financial hardships, there's, I guess, a probability that he's going to have criminal associations and peers. I think that's maybe a little bit more about where he grew up than anything, and to some extent shows about what he's overcome by not having any prior arrests or criminal activity. He is unlikely to be socially isolated. He doesn't have a criminal personality, high criminal personality score. He doesn't have anger problems. He doesn't have cognitive behavioral problems. He doesn't have social adjustment problems. He's an individual who's young and who made a bad decision, Your Honor, without a whole lot of thought in the moment, and which he would never make again. And I've frankly, Your Honor, seen similar sentences for what the state is asking for individuals who act with far more malice or forethought or violent intent, who have had much longer records, who have had actual records in criminal cases before, who've had opportunities to rehabilitate themselves, and who also caused a death under reckless circumstances. And the state in this case actually asserted to me that this was one of the most aggravated cases it's ever seen. I don't believe that it is, Your Honor, for the reasons that what I stated are not present here. No other criminal activity, no stolen car, no drugs, no alcohol, no impairment, none of those things, Your Honor. So for all these reasons, Your Honor, I believe that a sentence in the range of 6 years initial confinement is appropriate, because Mr. Washington is going to age out of the period of time when he would be likely to make this type of decision again, this impulsive and reckless decision again, by the time he completes that sentence. In terms of jail credit, I have 394 days to this point.
All right, does your client wish to make a statement?
I'm sure he does, Your Honor.
All right, whenever you're ready, sir. Oh, hang on, let me make sure your mic's on. Okay.
I would like to start off by saying that I am very sorry for the actions that I did in part of this accident. I'm totally at fault here. I'm sorry for even being in the car. Like they said, I never had a license. I shouldn't have been in the car. I'm sorry for speeding down the street. I was just trying to have fun with my friend at the time. I never intended to hurt anybody. I never expected to hurt anybody at all. I've never been in a car accident before in my life. So at the time of the accident, when it occurred, my whole thing was to get my friend to make sure he was okay. And when we got into the car with the other defendant, he said he was taking us to the hospital. He told us he was going to take us to the hospital. I believe we were going to the hospital. And when I realized he was taking us back to the apartment buildings, I told him let us out the car because my sister had a car as well. And I was just going to use her car to drive us to the hospital at the time. But as literally in like a couple of minutes, as time progressed, my friend ended up actually coming back to consciousness, and he was so adamant about not going to the hospital now, and he just woke up in a state of fury because I guess he never been in a car accident as well. So while I would sit there and trying to wrap my head around what actually happened at the time, a lot of people came and approached me and told me like somebody passed away, you know, and I always wanted it like a daughter, so it hurt me a lot, you know, but I never intended to hurt nobody. I never intended to hurt that little girl. It just happened. So the first thought that crossed my mind was turning myself in, making sure that that family gets justice, and I still want to see them get justice today. So I honestly don't know what to say, but I never intended to hurt no one, you know, and for them feeling like we were not remorse for it, we didn't feel sorry for it. We had a no contact order. We couldn't contact them. So I feel extremely sorry about that, and I'm willing to take whatever I get as far as sentencing, because no matter what they write, they can't bring their daughter back. But that's it. I had to live with this through the pandemic of being locked in a cell. I thought about suicide, all types of, you know, stuff that most people won't even think about, you know, because I had to sit there and deal with the fact that something I did brought pain to another family. I got two beautiful nieces that and I wouldn't know what to do if one of my nieces died. I wouldn't know what to do if one of my mom or my sister died. You know, I would want the same thing that the other family wants. So I can't argue with the fact that they wish to see me get the maximum time. I agree, but at the same time, this is my first time being in trouble in my whole life. I've never been through nothing like this before. I don't know what to do, you know? So I can't be mad at them. I just hope that they can eventually come to forgive me so I can forgive myself, you know? But until then, I'm just sorry. I don't know what to do.
All right, sir, thank you. Well, I want to begin by expressing my condolences to the family. What a beautiful girl she was. And if there are many things in this life worse than having to bury your own child, I'm not sure what they are. And it's unfortunate to see the animosity that's been on display here because there are no winners here. Everyone's losing. And based on what I've seen, everyone's hurting. So I agree with this young man's mother. I'm not here to judge him. I'm here to judge what happened. I'm here to judge what needs to be done for the protection of the community, for his care, for his rehabilitation. And I agree with counsel. Young men in particular have been driving fast since cars were invented, probably. And people in their teens and early 20s, and I don't see that many women involved with this. People are trying to demonstrate their manliness, testosterone, you could call it whatever you like. And in addition to that, I think one thing we all know is how impulsive young people are. And people in their late teens, early 20s, like yourself, frequently do not consider the consequences of their actions. And I also give some significant weight to the fact that you've never been in trouble before. Frankly, it's not that unusual in people. It is fairly unusual in people that come before me. I have been a judicial officer in Milwaukee for 22 years. I was born and raised in Brown Deer. I've been down 76th Street thousands of times in my life. I know what it was like when I was young. I know what it's like now. And it's not good. This is one of the worst places in the world to operate a motor vehicle, not just this country. I have been watching day after day. I've seen so many vehicles in houses, in trees, upside down, you name it. And it wasn't always like that in this community. I've been in more than one felony rotation. And until the last one that began about 3 years ago, I had never seen the volume of bad driving cases that we currently experience in this community. I don't have all the answers to that. And certainly, in some ways, this is less aggravated in terms of it's not a 20-mile case where the police are trying to pull you over. It's not an intentional act. In other words, I see many cases where people are driving at other people or pedestrians with the intent to run them over. And we had a recent, very famous example of that preceding the events in Waukesha. It's insufficient to say that it was nothing but an accident. Do I think he had intent to harm someone? No, I don't. But anyone driving, and I don't care if it was 105, 95, 85, it was in that range. And I'm sorry, no one is going to convince me that you were going 60 miles an hour down 76th Street. In fact, the vehicle's own equipment indicated over 100 miles an hour 4 seconds before impact. And I think anyone can look at the photos of this vehicle. This vehicle was obliterated. What's fortunate here is that there aren't 4 dead people, not one. It doesn't make the loss of this young lady any less tragic. But that's the kind of danger that you created by deciding to drive at that rate of speed on a street with a 40-mile-an-hour limit. And it's almost inevitable that you're going to hit somebody. People don't have time to react when a car's coming down that street at the rate of speed you were traveling. And it's ridiculous to imply that the people in the other vehicle bear some responsibility for this event. They don't. I am troubled by some of the things I've heard this afternoon about what's going on between then and now. But I'm not going to hold those against you because they didn't come from you, to my knowledge. I understand why people are upset that there was no expression of sympathy but your lawyer's right. There's a no contact order. Now, I don't know what's gone on the social media, and frankly, I don't want to know. But there was a legal no contact order issued by the court. There should not have been contact initiated, even for good purposes, by anyone associated with you or your family. I am not reading this. I am not concluding that you had zero remorse here, as a pre-sentence writer did. I don't believe you're putting on a show here. And I think we have to take a step back here and understand someone's never been in jail in their whole life, albeit a short life. To sit in the county jail for 394 days is not nothing. And I don't have any reason to doubt if you indicate that you contemplated suicide at some point. It's a relatively common occurrence, I believe, for people to get locked up like that, especially those who've never been in that situation before, especially those who've never gotten themselves put in a courtroom before, either as a juvenile or an adult. On the other hand, I think there was a reason to expect more from you here. Based on what your mother's described here as you being a good student. And you certainly present yourself, you don't present yourself like a criminal here. So I don't find this a situation where you're beyond rehabilitation. But this was a completely avoidable situation. And you can see, if you listen to people today, the way a tragedy like this ripples through both families. It's not just their family, it's your family as well. But obviously, as indicated, you can still be called. You can still be spoken to. You can still be visited while you're in prison. There is nothing left for them with regard to this beautiful young lady. And based on what I've seen and heard, she had an awful lot of potential. And we don't know what she might have grown up to be. And we're never going to know. And so in that sense, you took something not just from their family, you took it from the whole community. Because we need young people, we rely on young people as the basis for our future. And far too many of them are having their lives snuffed out in this community based on bad driving and other acts of violence. And I do think it's important that there be a message of deterrence that goes out. I'm not a huge fan of general deterrence, but because I'm not sure how effective it always is. But on the other hand, it's important that the proper message go out to the community that this is not some kind of minimal event, and that because you haven't been in trouble before, we're not going to address it that seriously. So, and I don't know who's watching on the live stream as well, but I was so impressed by the letter filed by this young lady's teacher and the way that they honored her. It really, as a parent, it chokes me up. So I do believe that you can still be a success in this life. I am not judging you as a person, but the events here are extremely serious and completely avoidable. And I am also disturbed by the statements that were made that you had a habit of driving fast. What is the rush to get to an ATM? There is none. And the weaving in and out of traffic, which I experience myself coming back and forth to work every day. I often wonder, why is everybody's time more important than mine? The people want to take you on the right, weave in and out, cut you off, and certainly don't react. You might be looking at gunfire. So it's a situation that's gotten completely out of control. That doesn't mean that you have to bear the brunt of that totality, but it does, to me, speak to the fact that a proper message has to be sent. And so that's what we're attempting to do. And I heard nothing about why there's never been an effort to get licensed, why there's apparently was no effort to get insured. These are not formalities. So obviously, if you decided to follow the law, if you didn't have a license, you wouldn't drive. Now, I understand that we have not hundreds, but thousands who like to disregard that, but it's still a law. And it may have taught you something that could have potentially prevented this. I remember all the films I had to look at about basically vehicular homicides or accidents ending in death. And the reason they used to show those was to try to communicate to people, cars can kill people. It's not a video game. It's, and far I'm concerned, in this community, it's the #2 weapon at this time. It's certainly a lot more damage being caused by vehicles than knives or other things. So with the exception of firearms, this is it. So again, and frankly, you know, I don't know exactly what to make out of the, I'm not going to give substantial weight to your statements about you thought you had to help your friend, but there is absolutely no reason to leave a scene of an accident, especially the one this horrific, without at least checking on people in the other vehicle. There's no reason for that. I don't have reason to believe that that would have resulted in something different here, unfortunately, but it's still an aggravating factor. I do balance that with the fact that you turned yourself in, which was a responsible thing to do, and you did so pretty promptly. Court will impose the following conditions of extended supervision. No new violations of law rise in level of probable cause. Payment of the court costs, submission of the DNA sample, payment of the surcharge. Those amounts are payable out of prison funds at the discretion of the department. Any balances payable on extended supervision, any remainders will be ordered converted to civil judgment. The no contact, or strike that, the restitution issue will be held open at this time. Is there any request here for no contact on the part of family of the deceased, Mr. Hubner?
Yes,
Right, well, you'll have to let me know who is going to be included in that.
I will.
You'll be able to cooperate with any treatment and counseling deemed appropriate by the department. Seek and maintain employment unless he's in school.
Your Honor, I think that the most appropriate person to put on that would be the child's mother, Aisha Bunch, I-E-S-H-A Bunch, B-U-N-C-H.
I'll be a no contact order as to her.
Thank you.
There'll be 394 days credit. He will not be eligible for any early release options under this sentence. In count one, the sentence is 18 years in Wisconsin State Prison, 12 years initial confinement, 6 years extended supervision. In count two, 8 years in Wisconsin State Prison concurrent, 5 years initial confinement, 3 years extended supervision. The credit will apply to both counts. Anything further?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
All right, please review his appeal rights with him and file the form. Counts 1 and 4.